Amen and amen. Wonderful. Thank you, praise band. I think I heard a new tenor voice there today. Or maybe that's baritone. I don't know. Thank you, Nathan, for joining. Praise band today. Quick announcement. Registration for the fall is open. I'm so proud of you guys. It looks like numbers are like half of us on campus are already registered for the fall. So continue that. If you haven't registered yet, we would call you to that. It would be wonderful to see that happen soon. And today, I'm pumped for those who are going to share. This week, we've kind of looked at it as hopefully getting to hear from some of our seniors before graduation comes. It's coming quickly, and this week we've gotten to do that, and today we're going to get to do that. Mike Burke has agreed to host for us 3 of our seniors. I'll let them introduce themselves as they come, but Mike and our panel, if y'all would come.
Whenever we do theater, like, I don't get nervous, but whenever I have to do like something in chapel, I get really nervous. I don't know. I think that's a good thing. So welcome to the senior panel. I would like to point out, Abigail, that it's not the senior citizen panel. I get to get it out before you did. But if people watching or in the audience don't know everyone, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and what your major is?
My name is Amanda Harmon. My major is English Literature and Creative Writing.
Hi, my name's Abigail Cheddar. My major is Secondary English Education, and I have a Theater Arts minor as well.
My name is Daniel Pitts. I am a dual major in Youth Ministry and Marketing.
All right. And I am Mike Burke. My major was English Creative Writing with a minor in Theater Arts. Thank you for the applause on that one. Any rate, so we're just going to discuss a few things about your experience and how are you perceiving how you're going to use what you've learned with your university experience in the future. My first question is, how have you been involved in visual and performing arts in the last few years? And I think I'm going to send that to Daniel, because I don't ever hear him talk a lot. And I'm really interested in what he's going to say. So visual performing arts, how have you been involved in that? And, what are you learning from that?
Wow. So last few years as in like all of college experience kind of thing?
Whatever comes to mind, man.
Okay. Well, I do filmmaking, so that's kind of my passion. I am not good at it, but I am working to be good at it. So, well, it's something I'm working on at least. So, started out at Calvary, and my goal was to post a photo every single day for like a year. And I did that and spammed a lot of people's feeds. But from there, I kind of learned ideas of visual things and just making photos and images that speak to people. My photos weren't good, but I was working on it. So recently, I've been just working with the church, Fellowship Church, if anyone knows about that, doing work for them in the filmmaking realm. One recent project that I love talking about was I had this image I saw, which was a piano burning. And so I convinced my pastor to let me go take a piano and a U-Haul truck and get Samuel Kocha, if you guys know him, to go burn a piano for an Easter video, which actually turned out pretty cool. But yeah.
Where can we find that?
YouTube. So if you just look up Daniel Pitts Films, that's where that's at. It's pretty cool. So yeah.
I don't know if we can top burning pianos today. But
Yeah, I haven't burned any musical instruments, so I'm just boring. So performing arts-wise, I'm not really involved in the visual arts because I know my limitations. But in terms of performing arts, like I said, I have a theater arts minor, so that has looked like me being involved in every main stage production at Calvary since I've come in 2018 in the fall, so mostly on stage, a little bit of backstage, but I've gotten to perform in a bunch of things. plays and musicals and whatnot. And I've also directed many a short scene for winter and spring shorts. The pinnacle of my shorts directing career, in my opinion, was the last winter shorts where I got to direct a musical scene. So that was fun if you saw it. I don't think there's like a video of it, so if you didn't see it, sorry.
Talk about you had to do like teaching.
Yes.
Talk about directing.
Yeah, so I was getting there.
Okay.
So I just finished my student teaching, and I was at Plaza Heights Christian Academy in Blue Springs. Had a great time there. And as part of that experience, I was able to student teach a drama class and also to direct a full-length production for the first time with high schoolers for the first time. So, but we pulled it off. I was really, really proud of them. So we did the Agatha Christie and Then There Were None, if that gives you any context. But yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I'm also not involved in visual arts because, nope. But in terms of performing arts, I have been theater adjacent for several years now, participating in a couple shorts performances and backstage for one of the main productions last year. This year I haven't been doing as much. I've also participated in the praise band for a few years, not this year, but in years past. So that's been performing arts as well. I don't know. Does writing count as performing arts?
What's that?
I said, does writing count as performing?
You have to look at it, right?
Yeah, or visual arts maybe. Anyway, I mostly write, so but literature ties into performing arts because we perform literature ideally. Sometimes plays are not as literary as one would like, but but like analyzing plays, and when we did The Importance of Being Earnest for a shorts performance, something would come up and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's this, because I'm a little bit of an Anglophile as well and like love British culture. So I was like, this takes place in the same place where Pride and Prejudice does. And Esther McCrae, who was the director, was like, you just are basically the dramaturg for the shorts performance anyway. But the literature aspect is really fun too.
All right. So I have to find my questions again because I wrote them all down and then promptly forgot them. So I have them on my phone. Okay. So really quickly, a little bit about me. I spent 26 years in the Marine Corps. Okay. Who growled? All right. Oh, I got hooed by the Army guy in the back. Sir, could you please keep quiet? We're going to harass. What was it? Francine's like granddad was here, and he was an old Army guy from like the Korean War, and I started harassing him as a Marine, and he started laughing. He loved it. Anyway, that's just one of those things. But one of the ideas that we talk about in the Marine Corps as we're teaching young Marines, in warrior concepts and whatnot, is the idea of being an exemplar, which means being an example, right, to other people. And specifically in the service, we're talking about being an example to other Marines. So how do you think? The question is basically, what does it look like to be a faithful believer, to doing quality work in your field? And by that, I'm thinking of like being an example to others. Does that make sense? As opposed to like evangelizing, or you know what I mean? And so how do you show that?
I was thinking about this answer earlier. I should have looked up who said this quote. I want to say C.S. Lewis, but don't quote me on that. But someone was like, to serve in a Christian context, you don't have to be a missionary. You can be a good Christian lawyer, a good Christian like doctor, a good Christian writer, a good Christian filmmaker. But the way you do that is if somebody goes and's like, I need a book on whatever, and then they go, the top results, the best in that category should be by a Christian. Or I want to be a photographer. I want somebody to take my photographs, and like if they look, the best in photography should be a Christian. It's not like we have God behind us, and if this is truly the ministry we're in, we should be able to succeed and I don't know,
So why should it
be exemplar. But like if we're the best, then like that points people back to God, because God doesn't do mediocre work. So Christians shouldn't do mediocre work either. And so if you do to the best of your ability and it's the ministry God wants you in, it'll be very good and reaching people it's supposed to. And again, I don't know who had that idea first. So don't quote me. That's not my idea.
Okay, so there's a bunch of little ideas scrabbling around in my brain, so we're trying to catch them all. So essentially, I don't know, I'm going to make a broad statement that I sometimes make that I think I believe in. I'm pretty confident in it. And that is that everything that is emotionally effective has a foundation in biblical truth. And good art is emotionally effective. That's what makes it good. And so for me, especially thinking from the perspective of a future educator, right? I want to be an English teacher. I want to be a drama teacher, and I want to use the literature that we are looking at, the drama that we are performing. It probably won't always be overtly Christian. And Then There Were None doesn't have a gospel presentation at the end. But there are good literature by virtue has some enduring theme, and an enduring theme always has a basis in the Bible. Again, I'm making blanket statements, but I think they're true. So when you, as a reader, like something that is so important to me, now I'm just talking about literature, as a teacher, as a future teacher, is trying to get students to relate to the themes and the characters in what they're reading, what they're performing, because that is when a lot of magical things happen, a lot of God-given things happen. Because like, okay, well, this play made me mad. Why did it make you mad? Because there's some injustice going on. How does that point us to the justice of God? This play made me so sad. Why did it make you sad? Because there's something that's not right. And even in that way, even when we see something that's not just a beautiful story about someone who finds God and, you know, their life is perfect, like, that's a nice story, maybe not a super realistic one. But even a tragedy can point us to Christ, because we can see there the crooked line, and we can use it to compare to that straight line, to allude to C.S. Lewis again. So how am I supposed to wrap this up and relate it back to the question? The point is, excellent art is emotionally effective. If it's emotionally effective, it must be related to a biblical theme. So what we need, at least in education, in literature and drama education, for me, a good Christian educator is able to take those themes and relate them back to the Bible and to show the student this actually does apply to your life, and it's actually really awesome.
Oh. I don't know how to follow those words. I'm not as good with these people. Well,
and just relate it to what kind of work you want to do, right? Like, how does that?
So the original question was how I can do like quality work in my field, kind of, right?
I don't know. There was so much talking. As a believer, what reflects quality work? Because you're not necessarily going to get a job. Say at church. You do what you do, right?
So I was thinking about this question also earlier, and I think it's kind of twofold in a way. I think first, one thing that a lot of us notice about Christian films, not to bash on any in specific or to be overtly negative, but a lot of times they're not based in reality. They're based in almost a false reality, we could say. So I think when it comes to filmmaking, a lot of the times quality is pursuing a realistic picture of what life actually is. I'm never affected by a film where somebody goes into a classroom and destroys an atheist and he gets hit by a car. Because, like Abigail said, that's not emotionally effective. It's just, that kind of idea. So first, a realistic picture, a realistic story that people can relate to. Whether that's a visual story based on a symbol like burning a piano, or it's something that like everybody struggles with. I I think the second kind of aspect of that would be just the visual side of it. I'm a very visual person. I'm not good with words, as you guys have probably noticed by now. But images affect people very strongly. So when it comes to cinematography, lighting, color design, the list of things that I could go on when it's in films, it's always pursuing a better level of it. There's been times I've been tempted to be like stuck into like my own little rut. It's like, I don't really want to get better kind of thing. It's like, I'm kind of just stuck here, but there's always something better to go on to, like better cinematography, thinking more deeply about a certain shot or something like that. So yeah, maybe that answers the question. So
well, go ahead and give us an example of what you're talking about, right? And you guys could even think of a literary example, right? But even if it's a secular film, what's something that you think reflects that reality, and what's our reaction to it?
Okay, that's a really good question.
Daniel has said more words in one sitting than I've ever heard him say, and I want to keep that going. With that, yeah.
So when you come to a film, you're planning a film, there's so many planning things that go into it. It's not just walking out, shooting a video, which would be nice if it was, but it's not. So it goes into shot planning the colors that you're going to use inside the shot, planning outfits down to the smallest detail, stuff like that. Yeah, kind of like theater. You're planning out all those things so they work congruently. And it's really interesting to see how that works out. One of my favorite, actually two of my favorite Christian films, not condoning everything that's in them, but one that's called Silence and one that's Hacksaw Ridge. Both of those are very emotionally affected to me. Silence is first about a monk, I believe, who goes overseas and is like under heavy persecution. And it's all about like if he's going to pursue like Christ throughout it or not. And it's a really effective film because it feels realistic and strong. Same thing kind of with Hacksaw Ridge. Very violent movie, not suggesting it, but also suggesting it.
What's good about that? What's effective about that?
It's effective because the story is real. The story is something that you can hold on to. I'm not a monk, that I know of at least, but I can understand the problems of struggling with doubt in the face of persecution, in different ideas like that I can apply to my own life. Like, it's emotionally effective like that, kind of like Abigail was talking about earlier. Take the mic.
Yeah, so an example of art that points us to Christ, or that we can use to point to Christ. So I'm going to use, oh my word, a little 2-for-1, you guys. So Les Miserables, I could talk about it forever. This is my TED Talk topic. It's one of them. So Les Mis is obviously a very famous musical. It's also a somewhat famous, very large book. And I got really into Les Miserables last year, and I love the musical, and I did read the book. And what I love about that story is it was written by Victor Hugo, a professed believer of some kind. I don't even know what like denomination. He would tell you whether he's Catholic or something else. I couldn't tell you. But the Christian themes in that story are so remarkable that it just always makes me emotional. And we get to see a positive and negative example in the story, which is what I think is so awesome. Because we see a character who has basically a conversion experience at the beginning of the story. Our protagonist, he's a criminal, and then this priest offers him grace and mercy, and it just changes his whole life. But not in the way of like, suddenly everything was perfect, and he never did anything wrong ever again. His life has changed. His whole paradigm shifts. Man, I would recommend you read some chapters in that book. Maybe not the whole thing. But you can see his internal struggle, even like as a reluctant convert. I cannot stop alluding to C.S. Lewis, and I guess it's because Amanda's right next to me. And even so, he still struggles. He still has intense feelings of guilt and his struggle to do the right thing is the main conflict of the story. And that is so emotionally effective. And then on the other hand, we have this foil character, sort of our villain, at least in the musical, who is sort of a negative example of what it looks like to reject mercy and grace when you're confronted with it. And we see the negative impact that has on his life. He has the same sort of like moment where he could shift paradigms, but he just can't, and he cannot live with that. And so in two different ways there, we get to see a story of this is what your life can look like when you embrace Christ. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than the alternative of just those ideals destroying you when you can't come to terms with them, when you can't overcome your pride, basically. So watch Les Mis. That's what I have to say.
So, I don't know, an example of what I was talking about, like, I don't know, striving for excellence in whatever field we go into is a Christian testimony. So just, I don't know, examples that they have brought up, like in Hacksaw Ridge, that was based on a real man who strove for excellence in his field as a soldier, and he used his Christian faith to bolster him and strengthen him in that, and like God helped him through that whole experience. And so like that's an example of what I'm talking about. And like with writing, I will bring up C.S. Lewis. I'm a huge fan of his, but like the reason we still talk about him and his works are still read, and like Narnia is still such a marketable property, is like he strove for excellence in that, and he wrote really well, but he also like used, like, his Christianity bolstered that and strengthened him, and God used him and to reach a lot of people with his works, like with Narnia and his other works like Mere Christianity, Screw Tape Letters, things like that. And that's why we still talk about him today. And other people like Tolkien, and among like Lord of the Rings, new series coming out soon, which we could talk about later. But I'm just saying, like, it's still so recognizable because God used them to make a lasting impact as they strove for excellence in their field. It doesn't have to be just academics or ministry, which is great, but it could be even as a soldier, a writer, a doctor, like any field.
Well, and since you keep conjuring up C.S. Lewis, if you've read things about him, there are people that worked with him, right, as a teacher. And I think there's a quote in one of our textbooks when we study him that this guy's like, man, if I was going to convert to Christianity, it was because the way C.S. Lewis conducted himself every day at work, right? And that's like a perfect example of what we're talking about. Not necessarily because he was preaching to somebody or he was just conducting himself in such a way that people were curious about what it was that drove him, right? All right, so moving on. The other day we were chatting about how you were teaching kids that are only like 4 years younger than you, right?
Don't tell them.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. And so, time-wise, there's not much difference between an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old. However, a lot has changed for all three of you guys since that. So the question is, what kind of words of wisdom would you offer your 18-year-old self? Do you need a moment to think about that? No? I know what I would say to 18-year-old me.
It's a lot longer than
It would be awful. Yeah, it might not be suitable. All right.
It is hard to narrow down because there are so many things I could tell silly little tiny baby Abigail. Foolish Abigail. No. It's remarkable, actually, to consider the growth that I have experienced over the last 4 years here and just in my artistic pursuits and my spiritual life, in my life. I think, well, I don't know. I'll just choose one. An art-related one. And that is, your intuition is perfect. Somewhere Bobby Jeffrey just got a little shiver. So basically, is it William Ball? He's an author, a director, and he wrote a book where he stresses the idea that the actor's intuition is perfect, which basically means when the actor's on stage in the preliminary stages of figuring out where we're going to go and how we're going to act and what we're going to, whatever. The actor can't make a wrong choice at that time, because any choice you make gives the director something to work with. And it is so much better to just make a choice than to uncomfortably do nothing because you're like embarrassed or afraid. And I, embarrassed and afraid, characterized definitely my first year or so, maybe longer than that at college. And yeah, there's nothing stupid about trying to make good things. It's the trying that makes them good. And so, yeah, just like relax, it's fine. Your intuition is perfect.
That's a perfect transition to what I was gonna say. But the very first semester I came in, I watched a YouTube video about just go out and shoot stuff. So I decided to organize a short film that thing has issues. But just going out and making something kind of thing, which kind of goes into the main thing I would tell myself then, which would be to pursue your true calling with the people who love you the most. When I first came here, I was like, okay, ministry, it has to be done in specifically telling people the gospel in this one way. And that's definitely a way to do it, but it's not the way that I'm most gifted, because I have other callings and stuff like that. And I realized that more as I went on, seeing that my gifts were more in visual arts and filmmaking and photography in that way. So as I pursued those, I could understand a little bit more about myself personally as a person, what I'm gifted in, what affects other people mostly. And in that pursuit, just coming alongside strong friends and strong people that really built me up in the other aspects of my life really helped. So telling my 18-year-old stupid self all these things, I just say number one, focus on my calling, what you really are gifted in, not what other people say you're gifted in or what other people say you should be gifted in or stuff like that. And then also focus on relationships that help you pursue those gifts in the most effective ways. So.
Interesting. Good one. C.S. Lewis didn't even get a point.
No, I know. See if I can tie him in somehow. No. I don't know. 18, yeah. If I was talking to 18-year-old me, I would probably just be like, calm down. It's okay. Don't rush. Soak in the moments. Take your time and enjoy things. Stop and smell the roses. All of those cliches, but really, it's good advice. Sometimes, especially in college, we're trying to rush through and get to graduation, and now that it's almost here, I'm like, oh, that went really fast. So I don't know. Yeah, slow down. Take time and enjoy the moments. Sometimes homework and studying can be put on the back burner if you need a break or time with friends or something. Invest in relationships just as much as academics, but also don't take academics for granted. Listen in your class and read your textbooks. That's what I would tell myself. Not that I didn't do that, but I would want to go back and read more closely and carefully some of the textbooks. And also I would tell myself to listen to those around me and my, your gut feeling, intuition. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so very much listen to your gut, trust that, because that's probably God leading you one way or another in a way you can't quite put into words yet. I've discovered that a few times. That's oh, I knew that all along. It's then why didn't you do it? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But, and listen to those who love you, because sometimes they can put it into words when you can't. Mm-hmm. So that's my advice to 18-year-old me.
Very well. Well done. You know what? I'm giving you, you're getting a little bit of that too. And to kind of jump on some of that, that's something that took me a long time to learn, actually. Oh yeah, trust your gut, because when you don't, you might regret it. All right? If something doesn't feel right, it probably ain't right. right? So yeah, that's a good piece of advice. You guys are stoked. You learned it now. I was never mind. But and something else you guys hit on that I think is good to wrap up with, like, you know, you're talking about creating something or writing something or performing something like that. None of that is a waste of your time. Like, no matter how good or bad you think you are at something, like, my thing is, especially because we're into writing, like, anything you write is not a waste of your time, right? Even if it's awful, right? You're learning something. And it's funny because it reminds me of a story. Well, I was a company first sergeant in the Iraq War, and we had these brand new lieutenants, and we were training them. And these guys are just out of college, right? And they're commanding 30 to 40 Marines in combat, like people's lives in their hands. So they're just getting beat up in training. Right, okay, yeah, well done. Just like teaching middle school, quite frankly, yeah. Explosions and things are going on. And this poor lieutenant's walking by me, and he's just like dragging his body, armor's dragging him, and he's got this radio in his hand, and the cord is on the deck, dragging in the dirt. I was like, sir, how you doing? Is everything, are you learning? Is learning occurring? He's like, yeah, first sergeant, especially for me, right? And he's getting ready to go get chewed out by the company commander because he did everything wrong. And I grabbed him, and I was like, Lieutenant, like, if you get to a point in your life where you're not learning something, I was like, then you're messed up, right? And he was suddenly just like, oh man, I'm so glad you said that, right? And he marched away. He was going to go get blasted by the CO, but he had a different attitude about it. And I think that's an important thing, you know, keep doing stuff, creating stuff, do it as best you can, because that's the point, right? So any final thoughts as we get ready to depart? Because I'm told that in 2 minutes we're done. Take photos, I don't know, no? Does anybody have a question for these guys? Do we have a, yes? So your question is, what inspires you to write, and what can you do to write consistently?
Anything can inspire me. If there's something that is like stuck in my head, this happens a lot. I'm a chronic overthinker, so there's just like a series of thoughts in my head that'll just swirl around, and I'm sitting there just working through it. I'm like, I should write this down, and that usually helps me process. So like that inspires me a lot. That's not like creative writing I would share with anyone, but it's still writing. And sometimes even just like figuring out how to express exactly what's going on in my head is an act of creativity. Other things that inspire me, family, friends, this funny story. I got pulled over last night. I'll probably write about that sometime. So,
got a minute.
Another time. So like
Breaking law is like an example.
No, I wasn't.
No. Oh.
My light was out. Leave me alone. So like I'll probably write about that sometime, but just like other things. And then I struggle to write consistently. I will be honest, I'm not really great at journal keeping, which is weird as somebody who wants to be a writer. Right? But something that people is like, just write, and it's good advice. I just need to take it. It's like, sit down and write, even if it's bad, even if it's just like, I wonder what I'm going to make for dinner tonight. Like, that's useful because you're getting into the habit of setting aside time to write. And then if you are consistent, I think not that I'm recommending reading him, but Stephen King said, like, no matter what, he sits down and writes like 1,000 or 2,000 words a day, no matter what, even if it's just like random stuff, like, what am I going to have for dinner? And I hope I go to the park later, or, you know, whatever. But it's just making a habit. And I will fully admit this is advice I need to take myself as well.
And I think one of the points you bring up is whatever the thing it is you're passionate about, if you want to do that thing, it has to become work, right? And not in a bad way, but you have to get an attitude. If you're waiting for the muse to speak to you, you're never going to create anything. Exactly. Right? So the thing that you're passionate about or you want to do is going to become work. You know, you're just, Elmore Leonard said he wrote 500 words before he even put his coffee on in the morning. So whatever that thing is you're pursuing, dedicate yourself to working at. So, all right. Where's Josh at? I'm assuming he's going to tackle me when we're done. Or do I? We'll keep going? All right. Well, all right. I'll keep hosting. Yeah, I don't care. Lunch, we'll have it delivered. You know, All right, we got time for another question? All right, I'm looking at the boss, man. All right, I'm not in charge of anything anymore. I'm retired. Anyone got a question? No. None of you are interested in creating anything. All right. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thanks for that. What would I tell? Just stop it. No. Just stop being. I was actually read a letter I wrote to a friend of mine when I was like 18, and I was like, "You're such an idiot. What were you thinking?" Probably whatever it was that. What I want to say, I probably shouldn't say because we're being recorded. But that's not that it's foul, but the things that I really thought were important just weren't, right? Like, I wasn't involved in church, okay? I grew up going to Catholic school, so at 18, I was like, escape this madness, right? And the things I thought were important were have as much fun as I possibly could, right? And as much time, you know what I mean? And it's so unimportant. And when I was like your guys' age, that's when I joined the Marine Corps. Like, I was 22 because I wasn't doing anything. And all my friends were graduating college, and I was like, my life's not going anywhere. And I didn't want to work behind a desk, so I could join the Marine Corps and have adventures. Until I got promoted, and then they gave me a desk. Anyway. And, one of the things I'm always marvel at about being amongst you guys is, like, how far ahead of me you are right now than I was. Like, Amanda is such an awesome writer. Like, and I'm a writer too. Me at her age, okay, like, I can't even imagine the things, if I was writing anything, I don't know. No, I wasn't at 22. No, I was in boot camp trying to survive. But, you know what I mean? You guys just, in your maturity, your development, and where you're at, and you're just so far ahead of me. I'm like always amazed at all you guys being around you, all right? My favorite thing to do at Calvary is eat lunch, and I haven't really done that a lot this year. But I love just like going to a random table and sitting down and chatting with somebody, because that's like my favorite part of the day. And that building that community is what's important, right? Not the stupid thing that I at 18 thought it was important. Does that make sense? And the community you guys build here is just so awesome. Like, you don't even realize how cool it is, until your hip starts to hurt like me, right? And things start going out, and you're like, man, that was great. So my advice, keep developing that. That's important. That community thing you guys have going here is what makes things happen, and where you're going to share your ideas and artistic things and discussions and realize you're not alone, right? And that, we're all in it together. So with that, I think we will wrap this up. Is that right, Dean? I don't want to get in trouble. I still want to graduate. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. I think a round of applause for our 3 seniors. Well done. All right, don't make me stand here swinging. What do you want me to do? Oh. All right. Hey, I'll confess to you, I don't like praying out loud in public. I do it when I'm called on because, clearly I've been called on to do it. But that's something I got to get over, if I can confess that. All right? All right. So, all right. Lord, thank you for bringing us together today as a community, and that we could share some of our experiences with each other and talk about the creativity that you've blessed us with and how to use it for your glory.